Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex, coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of... Welcome back to my holiday-themed book reviews. Now, this is going to be my final holiday book that I'm reviewing, and it's also going to be the final video of the year. And the reason why I say this is because, you know as well as I do, we only meet once a week, and New Year's Eve is going to come and go before we see each other again. So I just want to wish everyone a Happy New Year, and also here's a nice little reminder to drink responsibly and to drive responsibly. All we want is for nothing but togetherness to happen and just people to have fun and be safe while having that fun. So take that into consideration, please. Now, I would like to note that this last Christmas was a very special Christmas to me. I was surrounded by friends and family, and I really scaled back from my request of previous years because I feel like in previous years I asked for way too much. So I tried to just really bring it in and only ask for a few books that I wanted, and then after that just cut it off. Just be humble about it. And of course I received those books that I asked for, and I received a few surprises that I'm very grateful for as well. But the best present I had this year was the privilege of being married to my husband. And never did I imagine in a million years that same-sex marriage would be legal, but thankfully it is, and now I can really experience how special the holidays are when you have that loved one with you. But as I'm on a tender note, I would like to go on and bring into subject the book that I'm reviewing this year, which is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Now, the first time I came across this storyline was when I was a kid, and it was either when I had seen Mickey's Christmas Carol or Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol. It was one of the two. But I fell in love with the characters and storyline, so I saw all the other adaptations of it, and I really fell in love with the adaptation that Bill Murray was in called Scrooge. That was a fun, dark comedy. And years later, it was the George C. Scott version I had seen that really made me decide to finally read the book, because everyone said that this version was as close to the book as what you could get. And I really did not have an interest in reading Dickens again, because when I was in junior high, I read Oliver Twist, and it bored me to tears. Like, I hated it with a purple passion. So I steered clear of ever going back to Dickens. And I will have to admit, when I read Dickens this time and read A Christmas Carol, I just got sucked into it. I loved everything about it. It had good, strong characters. It had great pacing. And it was actually creepy. It was actually a lot creepier than what I ever considered. And because of that, everything combined, this is one of my favorite holiday go-to books. At this point, I'm sure everybody knows what to expect with this book. But unless you have been just spending your holiday seasons throughout life making out under the mistletoe, or just chugging nothing but alcoholic eggnog, those are the only ways I could think that you might not know what this book is about. Otherwise, we all know the story. But just in case you don't, I'm going to give you a brief rundown of what to expect. With A Christmas Carol, you have the main character, Ebenezer Scrooge, who is literally this old, wealthy, heartless geezer. And he's gotten to this level of being because he never gives to charity, he never helps anybody, he's only out for himself financially. And also, I don't really see him helping anyone unless it benefits him. But this takes place on Christmas Eve, where he is confronted by his nephew Fred, some charity workers, and also his clerk named Bob Cratchit. And just to show you what kind of a person Scrooge is on an everyday basis, Fred invites Scrooge to come to his Christmas party, and Scrooge says that anyone who says Merry Christmas should be boiled in their own pudding and have a stake of holly driven through their heart. pleasant guy. And then the charity workers, when they ask for money to help feed and clothe the needy, Scrooge is like, well, they should just die and decrease the surplus population. As I said, pleasant guy. And when he interacts with Bob Cratchit, he is nothing but just this cantankerous old vulture. And he just sits behind his desk counting his money, and Bob Cratchit does his job and everything, but the man is cold, and Scrooge won't even provide him with enough coal so he can stay warm while working. That's how much of a tightwad this man is. And, of course, he does give Bob Cratchit Christmas Day off, but the thing is, he bitches about it the entire time. So it's not really a bleeding heart sort of deal. So later that night, when Scrooge goes home, he is visited by the ghost of his business partner, Jacob Marley, who had died 7 years prior. And Jacob Marley is like decked out in nothing but chains and weights and money boxes. And he warns Scrooge that if Scrooge does not change his life, he is going to end up in the same predicament where he is damned for all of eternity to carry on the weight of all of his sins. And so to open up his eyes, Scrooge is to be visited by 3 ghosts of the past, present, and future. And by what they have to show him, this is the last opportunity Scrooge has to do a complete 360 and become a person who has a servant's heart rather than just a heart of stone. Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol during a time when the British were going through many financial hardships, where their usual holiday celebrations were depleting due to funds. And originally, Dickens began A Christmas Carol for financial gain, but money wasn't the only reason. Since Dickens grew up in poverty, he wrote A Christmas Carol as a means to bring awareness to not only poverty in general, but specifically child poverty. Also, he wanted to produce a literary work where its moral could be upheld throughout the year, and his efforts weren't in vain, as his work did impact a cultural change for British Victorians, which by how A Christmas Carol's message depicted wealth, greed, and consumerism, it helped to remind everyone of the spirit of the season and to give to those less fortunate. As far as money was concerned, it seems Dickens was estimating A Christmas Carol would put £1,000 in his pocket. However, he didn't receive that turnaround, as he sold the book at 5 shillings a copy, while it had been printed and bound with more expensive materials. Fun facts! Here are a few things you might not know about A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Published in December of 1843, A Christmas Carol sold 6,000 copies on the week of its release and had sold out entirely by Christmas Eve. Also, A Christmas Carol is divided into 5 staves rather than 5 chapters. And if you're wondering what a stave is, it is the terminology used for a musical staff in the United Kingdom. And with all musical staffs, there are 5 lines reserved for notes. And with A Christmas Carol, this novella is intended to begin on a low note and to end on a high note. Since we have that covered, it's now time to move on to the spoiler section of this video. Now, this is going to be where I discuss some scenes and character development that could ruin the book for you if you have never read it before. But at the same time, let's get real. This is A Christmas Carol. Everyone has either seen it or read it by now or have heard the gist of it by word of mouth, and you know exactly what's going to happen. So if you don't want to skip this segment, just keep playing it. I'm not going to really discuss anything that no one already doesn't know. And also at the same time, if you do want to skip this, just scroll down. You'll see at the top of my comment section, I have a comment pinned, and within that, you'll see a timestamp. Just click on that timestamp and it will redirect you away from the spoilers so you can go in and move to the thoughts section of this video. And as always, you only have 17 seconds to do this. So ready, set, go. Now that everyone has had an opportunity to click away, I would just like to say that A Christmas Carol actually has quite a few creepy moments in it. And I imagine for audiences when this was first released, it was probably fairly intense for them to read it. And the reason why I say that is because even though I am a seasoned horror fan and I really don't consider this book to be flat out horror, there are still a few scenes that caused my pulse rate to increase. Now, one moment that I want to talk about that really stood out to me was the whole Jacob Marley sequence. And the reason why is because Dickens only utilizes a few sentences to describe the action of Jacob Marley's ghost ascending the stairs to enter Scrooge's bedroom. And even though it's just a few words that describe this, the way Dickens presents it is, it feels like it's drawn out and that there's actually something creeping up behind you. So that was really awesome. And it was actually more frightening than any of the movie depictions that have been out there. The closest that I could compare it to is maybe how Jacob Marley was portrayed in the George C. Scott adaptation of this book. Now, one moment that I was really impressed by, and unfortunately with the movies, the only thing that's depicted this from my knowledge has been Mr. Magoo's Christmas special. Which, come on Hollywood, if you're going to remake this again, please put this scene in it. Because what happens is, when Jacob Marley departs Scrooge's bedroom, he leaves through the bedroom window. And Scrooge goes over to the window to see what's happened to Jacob Marley. And when he goes over to the window, he looks out and he sees nothing but a horde of damned souls roaming the night. And they're all weighed down by the vices that they had in life, or the sins that they had in life. And so it's really a creepy imagery, and I feel like it could be utilized very well in the right hands, like maybe someone such as James Wan or something like that. I think he could really do good bringing the horror elements out. Now, one thing that I found surprising was how with every spirit who visits Scrooge, either they are presented in a way where at first they're frightening, or they have something frightening with them, or they appear frightening. And what I mean by this is, there's a scene where you have the ghost of Christmas present, and he and Scrooge have explored the present of what's going on, and before they depart, you have where the ghost of Christmas present opens his cloak and reveals two just disheveled, horrible-looking children who are named Ignorance and Want. And these are allegorical characters. So you have the personification of, if these words were living, breathing things, this is what they would look like. And by the way Dickens describes them, they seem like they're demons. And just the vibe I got from them, it honestly feels like these little hellions would have one good time having a tea party with Rosemary's Baby and Damien. Just saying. I want to use this opportunity to bitch about the people who say Scrooge is not half as bad as what everyone makes him out to be. Which, believe it or not, there are those people out there who believe exactly that. And here's some of the arguments that I have heard in regards to that concept. The first argument is, well, Scrooge isn't that bad because, truth be it, Bob Cratchit lives in a better house than he does, and the house that Scrooge lives in is, it might be bigger, but it's run down. Okay, so I don't know how that's an argument for saying he's not as bad as what everyone else makes him out to be, because let's look at it this way. Scrooge is living in a home that is run down, and at the same time, he has tons of money, but he is not using this money for anything good whatsoever. He's choosing to live in a rundown home so he can continue to sit on his pile of money like the vulture he is, so he doesn't have to waste any pennies or anything of the sort in what he would consider to be frivolous spending. And just to show you how much of a tightwad he is, he considers frivolous spending to be spending money on a location or a home that might actually be a better living quarters than what he is currently in. This is his choice. This is his choice to be that tightwad and to sit on his money. And again, the money is not going anywhere where it's going to help anyone out. It's not going to charity. It's not improving the town. It's not going to anyone. He's just sitting on it. Now, in comparison, you have Bob Cratchit, who he and his family are just crammed in under one roof. And the thing is, had he the opportunity to improve his living conditions, I'm sure he would do that. Now, with him, it's not a choice. He's just been dealt a shitty hand and he's trying to make the best of a poor situation. And with the mentality that Scrooge is in, it actually reminds me of a mentality that I've actually encountered in life, which one person had told me, if you want to be rich, live poor. If you want to be poor, live rich. Now, granted, the person who told me this was an individual who has not hurt for money. And it really shocked me to see how far gone this person was, because the thing is, he looked at being poverty-stricken as a choice. And that is not a case whatsoever. I know quite a few people who try their darndest to save. They're smart about their money. They're smart about their expenses. But you know what? They're still in a rut simply because poverty is real. The options out there are not that great of options for many people. And it rubs me the wrong way when people think that being poor is an option. It's not. Now, the second argument I've received is Scrooge is not half that bad because he actually pays his clerk, who is Bob Cratchit, more than what any other clerk was making at that time. Alright, so let me break this down for you. Scrooge is paying his employee. That is it. Nothing more, nothing less. And even if he is giving Bob Cratchit just a little bit more cabbage here, I'm sure he's doing it because no one else is stupid enough to put up with his bullshit. Case closed. This ain't a bleeding heart sort of deal. Now, the third argument I've heard is he gives Bob Cratchit Christmas Day off when Bob asked to have the day off. And so people think that he has a bigger heart than what everyone else says he does, because he simply gives Bob Cratchit Christmas Day off. Congratulations, you had a spark of love, or whatever you want to call it, that entered your stone-cold heart for a fleeting second. You don't get a pat on the back for this. You honestly don't. I've worked for some pretty shitty people in the past, and truth be it, a lot of times, if it does not affect their schedule or anything, and you ask for a day off, you can have that day off. But again, it has to be where it's not affecting them. And in this circumstance, Scrooge does bitch about giving Bob Cratchit the day off, but I think in his moment of bitching about that circumstance, he's also considering that if Bob Cratchit had a day off, it really wouldn't cost Scrooge anything. And so he's still thinking about himself in this circumstance. Again, not a bleeding heart deal. Now, those are the arguments I had received, and I can't really think of anything else in those regards at the moment. But now I do want to give Scrooge credit where credit is due. At the beginning of this book, you have where Jacob Marley, his ghost, goes to Scrooge and explains that if Scrooge doesn't change his ways, he is going to be doomed to wander the afterworld as this chained up specter who is carrying on the weight of all of his sins that he has accrued in life. And so we already have that awareness. And then at the end of the book, you do have Scrooge where he is confronted with his own grave, and he sees that no one is crying because he's dead. As a matter of fact, quite a few people are happy he's gone. And this does kind of hit him in a hard place as well. But between those two sequences, you do have where Scrooge goes with the Ghost of Christmas Present, And he sees Bob Cratchit's home, and he sees in the poor condition that Tiny Tim's health is. And it's at this moment that we see a spark in Scrooge where he is actually concerned for someone else besides himself. And he begins asking the ghost of Christmas Present, well, is there anything that can be done for him? Can't his life be spared? Why must it be this way for Tiny Tim? And so it's the first moment that we actually see him care. And, of course, the ghost of Christmas Present uses Scrooge's own words against him, and this causes Scrooge to have somewhat of an epiphany that he needs to change his ways. And so I do feel that, yes, Scrooge did change because he did want to avoid that eternity where he's carrying around the chains of his sins. But also at the same time, because of this moment, I really feel that him being confronted with the horrors of Tiny Tim's soon-to-be death, this is what causes him to realize he can't be so self-centered. And he does actually still have a heart, because truth be it, Scrooge just didn't wake up one day as this asshole. He was really conditioned into it. And so that's what I have to say about giving credit where credit is due. I really feel that he had decided to make a change before he had saw the conclusion. Now, even though Scrooge does become a good guy by the end of the book, and he's given to charity, and he actually becomes like an uncle to Tiny Tim, I still couldn't help myself. I would have had to go up to Scrooge, pat him on the back, and then just kick him dead in the balls and be like, you know why. Now, God bless us, everyone. For those of you who are observant, you might notice that I had to get the hell out of that hot-ass, ugly Christmas sweater. And the reason why is, even though it's December, this is Mississippi, and it is hot as hell outside, and I was sweating like a whore in church in that thing, so had to take it off. But the good news is I was able to change into a shirt that I received as a Christmas present this year, and this was created by Kathy Jones Quirk, which I'll provide a link to her Facebook page in the description section of this video. So if you need anything done for you, such as having a shirt monogrammed or having a coffee cup done, she can do that for you. And all you have to do is just hit her up on Facebook, tell her what you're in need of, and she can work with you from there. But she made this shirt that says, Our First Christmas as Mr. and Mr. 2019. So as you can tell, she's very GLBTQ friendly, so don't be afraid to hit her up. Now, on to my thoughts about A Christmas Carol. I honestly did not expect it to be as haunting as what it was. And I know that sounds oxymoronic because it's a book about ghosts. But what I mean by that is I didn't expect for it to have the chill factor that was provided within its pages. And with the movie adaptations out there, the only time that I really felt creeped out was when the Ghost of Christmas Is Yet to Come came onto screen. But with the book, Dickens really uses almost every opportunity possible to give these ghosts at least one creepy element. And it might only be for a sentence or two, but by the way Dickens uses these opportunities, it is something that when a reader is relaxed and they're just getting into the story, just getting sucked into the plot and the characters and everything, it's these moments where it makes you tense up, because he has a way of making it feel like something is creeping up behind you, even in the simplest of moments. And aside from everything being as haunting as what it was, I felt like there was a deeper level of intimacy here, especially when Dickens focused on the transformation of Scrooge. And truth be it, I think Scrooge is probably one of the greatest transformative figures in literature. But what I really appreciated, and even though the movies touch on this subject, what I appreciated with the book, it feels like it just zones in more on the fact that you should not judge other individuals because you don't know what that person has been through to make them a hardened person. And with this, it shows how Scrooge went from an innocent child to a man who had a heart of stone to a man who became as good as gold. And it's interesting to see that transformation, but at the same time, you really see firsthand, and it's done in a wording that kind of touches the heartstrings. It actually touches the heartstrings very well, to see how one person can be changed into a hateful individual. And so it does allow the reader to gain more of an empathy and sympathy towards Scrooge in this light. Now, as far as subjects go, since we're on that topic anyway about how you shouldn't judge another person because you don't know their past, other subjects that come into play are greed and consumerism. And of course, we see the greed with Scrooge because he's sitting on top of his mound of money. He's really not doing anything with it to better himself, but at the same time, he's not doing anything to improve anyone else's life either. He's just sitting on a mound of money that he probably expects is going to go with him when he dies. And it's just really sad to see someone so addicted to a material item like that, where they don't even want to utilize it themselves. They just want to hoard it. And so that was really interesting to see as an aspect in the book. The subject of consumerism, that is very blatant throughout, and these subjects are blatant in the movies too, but in the book, it just seems like there's a deeper level of focus, especially from Dickens. And with consumerism, it really shows how the meaning of the season is togetherness, and to help your fellow man or your fellow woman, and to help provide for them when they are unable to provide for themselves. And this isn't talking about just meaningless crap. This isn't talking about like a new gaming system or a new TV, stuff like that. It's talking about helping them with food or clothing or home necessities that they can't afford. And it's all about bringing it back to the basics. And the thing is, especially in this modern day, I feel like consumerism is probably at its height. We're really living in a time where it's a give it to me now society. And it's become where a lot of people are spoiled because of this. It becomes where a lot of people are greedy because of this. And so with A Christmas Carol, I think that this is a book that will continue to stand the test of time, because even though it takes place in the Victorian era, greed and consumerism is going to be forever. And sometimes it's good to have that book in your hand that brings you back to the basics and reminds you what you're supposed to do as a human being. This book is not a difficult read. It is easy to comprehend. It is not explicit. Teenagers can read it, even preteens can read it if they are advanced readers, and I highly recommend this. As a fan of the horror genre more so than any other genre, I did not expect to like this as much as what I did, and I was really happy and pleasantly surprised when I felt that Dickens did not excuse the horror elements of this book when they did appear. So because of that, I feel that this is a book I would recommend to everyone. It's totally something that everyone should read once. And it's one of those kind of books where it teeters on the gray area between creepy and wholesome. So it's really a great read. I highly recommend it. Now on to the questions. My first question is, what is a gray book that you would recommend? And what I mean by gray is, what is a book that isn't considered horror, but there's enough horror elements in it for people like myself to enjoy? The second question I have is, have you ever been visited by spirits during the holiday season? If so, do you know who they were, what happened, so on and so forth? Definitely load up the comment section on those two questions. As far as myself is concerned, I do believe I have been visited by my loved ones during the holidays. And when I say my loved ones, I mean those who have obviously passed away. But the ones who I feel come around are my great aunt, my grandfather, and my cousin Charlene. And with my great aunt, when she comes around, I tend to smell cigarettes and Liquid Diamonds perfume. My grandpa is more of a practical joker. Like, we'll have lights go out, the toilets will flush, Things might fall off of the shelf, and it's not anything that's frightening. I know that sounds like it could be frightening, but it honestly isn't. That was just his personality in life. And as far as my little cousin is concerned, the vibe of the place kind of becomes a little bit more upbeat, maybe a little more hyperactive in feeling, I guess you could say, because she really bounced off the wall a lot when she was a kid, and she had died when she was a teenager. And when she comes around, I smell Tommy Girl. So I know it's them. I'm not frightened by them. I welcome them every year. It's really comforting to have them around, so it's not anything I'm worried about. Now, it's time that I move on to the end of the video. I want to start off by thanking Joseph Baylott and Lisa G for contributing to my Patreon account. I really appreciate your contribution. This money is getting used to get new props and sometimes even new books to review. So thank you very much for that. And also, if you would like to contribute as well, the link to my Patreon is in the description section of this video. If you're unable to contribute, no sweat. I do these videos for fun. I don't expect anything in return. All I hope is you just continue to enjoy these videos, and that's it. Other than that, if you want to find me on social media, there are links to my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram in the description section of this video as well. Definitely shoot me a message and follow me on those platforms. And definitely be sure to click the notifications bell and subscribe to this channel. And until we meet again, I hope everyone has a great new year. Remember, drink responsibly and party responsibly. Have a designated driver if you're going to be out and about. I don't want to hear about anyone getting in a wreck or dying. Hopefully no one dies or gets in a wreck. But have a happy new year, and until we meet again, sweet nightmares.